put it on a Bedini wheel with a trigger. That's the trigger right there. Coil. On the two coils pulsing. Same circuit.
Bedini motor is in the sense of a generator because it has an additional coil that collects the pulses to charge the battery. Explanation of the basic principle of the Bedini motor. The magnetic field of the permanent magnet mounted on the rotor disc passes through an iron core, not steel or highly magnetic alloy, wound with two coils, a control coil and a charging coil. A polarized permanent magnet like a block, not a toroidal magnet, is a necessary condition for this system. There are three stages to consider when considering the magnet passing through the coil wound around the soft iron core in the Bedini motor. Plus stage 1, start to approach the iron core. At this stage, the coil will generate an induced electromotive force. When the circuit is closed, the current flows in the control coil and the charging coil.
At the control coil, the current does not pass through the B, E, pin of the transistor, but goes in the direction directed by the diode through the resistor.
The transistor is like a lock that opens and closes, now closed. At the same time, the charging coil has an induced electromotive force, and a charging current flows through the diode into the battery receiving the charging current. It should also be noted that there is a reverse induced electromotive force when there is a charging current for the battery at the charging coil that is generated, hindering the magnet from reaching the center position. But the initial kinetic energy for the rotor plate attached to the magnet is enough to overcome the center point. Plus stage 2, when the magnet reaches the center point, that is, the straight line, axis, passing through the north and south poles of the magnet is also the symmetry axis of the cylindrical iron core. At this time, the magnetic field of the soft iron core stops changing due to the impact of the magnet, which means it has reached the level of saturation of magnetism. The magnetic field with the magnetic induction reaching the maximum level will collapse. This is also the time when the magnet switches to the state of overcoming the center point. Plus stage 3, the magnet passes the center point, symmetrical to the first stage, approaching the coil. This stage has a reverse electromotive force due to the magnetic field of the iron core collapsing at the speed of light. The special thing is that the magnet is moving to the other side, symmetrical to the first stage, and has an electromotive force opposite to the first stage in phase, that is, symmetrical in the form of the voltage graph. If we draw the voltage graph for the electromotive force, we see that, although the voltage is out of phase and geometrically symmetrical in the graph, one side is positive, one side is negative. In an opposite way, this reverse electromotive force is in phase with the electromotive force due to the magnetic field in the iron core collapsing.
The current in the control coil goes in the opposite direction compared to the beginning, in stage 1, leading to the transistor opening at B, E, and amplifying the current at pin C.
At this time, there is a current passing through the charging coil because pin C is amplified, circuited. The voltage supplied to the charging coil at this time is the battery that maintains the system, not the main energy collecting battery.
However, in a short time, very short, about microseconds, at this moment the voltage at the B, E, pin of the transistor is lower than the unlock voltage threshold.
This is because the magnet begins to move away from the coil, and it is also the time when the magnetic field, dielectric field, collapses from max to near min. Therefore, the coil that is storing energy, capacitance, is suddenly cut off because the transistor is closed, leading to a voltage increase of thousands to tens of thousands of times. This has been verified by experiment and the theory for this phenomenon has been forgotten or rarely mentioned. Charles Proteus Steinmetz was the one who examined the experiment and then used mathematics and physics to describe this phenomenon. Modern physics has ignored the work of the pioneers of electricity such as Charles Proteus Steinmetz, Nikola Tesla, Oliver Heaviside, Joseph Thomson, etc. They deliberately ignored it to avoid humanity from re-examining the physics of ether electricity. I mentioned magnetic field above, but it was implied that it is a dielectric field, because according to ether physics, magnetic field is actually the dielectric field of ether that has lost inertia or lost energy. The Bedini engine has been developed since the 80s until now with many historical ups and downs associated with conspiracy theories about free energy and technological suppression. You can search for this on Reddit under the title, Tartaria, Free Energy in the 80s, John Bedini's Pulse Charging Battery Systems, Self-Running Generator, Ether Electric Technology.